Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 319, and today's date is March 20th, 2014, and the title of this episode is Tensions Rise as the U.S. Imposes Laughable Sanctions on Russia. And of course, today, the U.S. came out and they imposed sanctions on Russia. They imposed the sanctions on individuals, and also in certain sectors of Russia, Russia retaliated and said, hey, listen, we're going to impose sanctions on certain individuals, and these are all ridiculous sanctions. They actually mean nothing. And again, if the United States, if the people of the United States believe that these sanctions are going to do anything, they're not. These are incremental steps to get the war started, and this is what they're trying to do, because really, do they really believe that these sanctions are going to force Russia to give back Crimea? No, it's not going to happen. This is all laid out to start war. They need something to cover up this entire collapse. And if we really think about it, if they went out and they sanctioned Russia completely, this would have a devastating effect on Europe, because Russia could just say, you know what, we're just going to shut off these gas valves. We're just going to shut everything down. All the people in Europe will not be receiving all of this gas. We'll see other things happen because a lot of the corporations are in Russia. They're doing business in Russia. And guess what? Russia's economy is strong. United States, the Euro nation economy's weak, and they're very fragile at this point. It doesn't matter if the Fed, the U.S. government, they're out there telling us that we're in this fantastic recovery, we're creating jobs. We know this is a lie and it's fake, because if they have to keep reminding us, and again, the president was out there again today reminding us how we're in this fabulous recovery. But let's get into the economic collapse news. We'll go through the sanctions, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the report. And we're going to head out to Cyprus right now. And again, we understand they're in capital controls, and you're never going to believe this, but the housing market is still not doing well. Well, we have to understand the capital controls are in effect. People can't take out money. There is absolutely no one going out, and there's no one going to purchase these homes. And this is why they see residential prices for both houses and flats fell by 1.6% during the fourth quarter of 2013. The majority of asset classes and geographies continued to be affected, with areas that had dropped, and they are not seeing really any improvement right now, and they're not going to, because they are receiving bailouts. They had a bail-in. They stole the people's money. They put capital controls on the people of Cyprus. It is over a year now, and now they're saying springtime, late spring, we might remove these capital controls. And again, all these people who are living in Cyprus are not running around going, God, I need to buy a new house. I can't even get my money out, but let me go buy another house. And again, this is why we see car sales down there. We see housing sales down there. Things are not turning out well. And they're not turning out well in Greece either. I mean, they received a new loan, a new tranche from the IMF. And again, this comes with certain stipulations where they have to impose austerity, lay off people, and this does not help the economy whatsoever. And the Greek streets were thronged with delusion crowds as some 3,000 union members hit the streets, fed up with austerity measures, just as the country secured another 8.5 billion euro, coupled with further spending cuts and unemployment. And we know this is not going to help this country whatsoever. The population is experiencing its six straight years of recession. Unemployment is 28%, and under 25 years old, they're experiencing the sharp end of it. The youth unemployment rate now is 60%. And again, this is not helping. It is making everything worse. And if we have to think back when they first received the first bailout and they told us everything was going to be fine, since that time, the economy over the 4 years has shrunk by 25%. So are they making it better, or are they actually making a lot worse. And I'm going to say they're making it a lot worse. Now, the president out there, he's having this televised discussion, and he's out there letting everyone know how he's improving the economy for everybody, how he's going to create jobs. I mean, they never tell you how they're going to do it. He's telling you all the things that we should be doing. This is what we should be doing. We should be creating jobs. We should be doing this. Never giving you real facts, never really giving you real data. Well, guess what? The real data is the complete opposite of what he is saying. And again, claims missed by most in 8 weeks. Initial jobless claims rose for the first time in 4 weeks. It's not getting better, and there is a new study out there. And again, we've been talking about this for a very long time. A new study documents the bleak plight of Americans who have been unemployed for more than 6 months. So what they're saying is if you go past that 6-month period, only 11% of you are going to actually find a full-time job. The rest of you, you have no chance of finding anything. Why? Because there are no jobs out there. And the long-term jobless number, 3.8 million, or 37% of all unemployed Americans, are showing that the long-term unemployed are more than twice as likely to stop looking for a job than to find one. Up to 2 million Americans who would have been benefited from the emergency benefits program, again, we know, lost their assistance, and as this continually goes on, it'll be 2 million, then it'll be 3 million, then it'll be 4 million, it'll be 5 million. And again, when they were getting this assistance, remember, this is the long-term emergency benefits. When they were receiving this, what you had to do I think it was every 2 weeks, what you need to do is show that you're looking for a job. You have to write down all the jobs that you applied to, where you sent your resume. And again, these people have been past the 6-month time period, so they are never going to find a job. Why? Because those jobs aren't out there. This is what the reality is. The unemployment is nowhere near 6.7%. It is much closer to 30 to 37%, of course, depending on the calculation you use. Now, we understand that housing is imploding on itself. And I've been talking about this a long time. We've been taking it step by step every single month, and we've been tracking this. And guess what? It is completely true. It is not going to turn out well at all for housing, and especially those people who are flipping, who are speculators. They're going to lose their shirts just like they did in 2008, and people are just going to run from these homes. And we're seeing it happen right now, because what we're seeing is that 20% of buyers under the age of 33, the prime group of first-time buyers, delayed their purchases because of debt, because of student loan debt, can't finding the job because I have this debt and I can't pay it off. So the last thing I'm going to do is go out and buy a home. And again, we've said this before, the youth of America at this point is not going to be the foundation, and they're not going to help bring this housing, the economy, out of what is coming. And of course, we know what's coming. It is called the collapse. Now, Bank of America came out with this chart of housing and the housing recovery, and it is completely declining. All cash sales comprised 35% of transactions in February, up from 33% in January and 32% in February of 2013. 73% of investors paid in cash, because this is all the money that is being pumped in now into the hedge funds, into Blackstone, and the Fed, the government, are having them go out and buy these houses in cash. Because do you really think the American people have cash to purchase homes? No, they don't. They take out mortgages. But guess what? They're not taking out mortgages because mortgages are imploding. They're declining by 66%. This is why we see the mortgage departments closing and laying off thousands upon thousands of people. And I mentioned this many, many times. Back in September, October, flowing into this year, all we're seeing is layoffs in these departments, because they realize the American person cannot go out and purchase these homes. And again, this is not going to turn out well, and this goes on to say it's clear there are other people who would like to buy a home that are not in the market because of debt issues, so we can expect a lingering impact of delayed home buying. Well, I'm going to tell you it's going to be a lot worse than just delayed. I'm going to tell you it's not going to happen. They're in a dream world that they think they're going to come out of what is happening. Now, the corporate media, and this is coming out of Reuters right now, and I'm starting to see this in other corporate media because they get their sources all from the same place. They're already making a case of why the housing market is not going to be doing well in the springtime. And guess what they're blaming it on? They're blaming it on the winter weather, because it was snowy, because it was cold. Again, we have to look around the entire country. The entire country was not blanketed by snow. The snow did not last for 8 weeks in a row. Yeah, it snowed one day or 2 days. They cleaned it up. People can go travel. They can do things. And, a week or two later, it snowed again. This is winter. I hate to say it. This is how it works. And again, every single part of the country does not feel this, but they're already making the case and blaming it on the winter weather, because they're saying that people didn't go out and put their houses on the market because it was cold, because it was snowy. And now that spring's coming, this is going to really have an effect on the spring sales. Well, no, this has nothing to do with it. The reason we're going to see an effect on it is because the major mortgage departments in these financial institutions realize the American people are tapped out. They don't have money to buy these homes. People can't find work, and this is why they're laying off all these people. We understand that the housing market has been falling ever since the president was out there in August of 2013 telling us that we're in a housing recovery. Every report I did was a decline in housing, a decline in housing, a decline in housing. Yes, prices were going up, but that's the illusion. Just like the stock market. The stock market's going up, but that's the illusion because they're pumping the money in to purchase these homes. But the reality is, and they know it, the insiders know it, just the American people don't know it, is that the entire real estate market is falling apart, and this is why they're making excuses. What's going to happen now when we go into the summer months? What are they going to say? It's too hot? That people can't go out and buy houses because the sun's shining too bright? Let's see what happens if we make it that far before the collapse, before the event, and we'll see if this is what they start talking about. Now, we have many other indicators around the globe in the United States to let us know that the economy is not doing well. Well, here we are again with Caterpillar. Global retail sales are sliding again. They dropped for the 15th month in a row. Well, again, decline in global retail sales, which declined around 8% from February of 2013, which in turn was a 13% decline from 2012. So all we're seeing right now is Caterpillar is having a tough time. Their sales continue to decline. They laid off and closed factories. They laid off, I think, around 40,000 people. And of course, back in the fourth quarter of December, they said, "Oh, look, things are getting better." Well, of course they are. You just cut your losses. You laid off all these people, but your sales continually go down. So things are not getting better. They're actually getting worse. Now, like I said, we're going to see more layoffs in the financial institutions. Bank of America has just announced they're going to be laying off around 5% of jobs at 2 units. They haven't given us a number, just like Deutsche Bank hasn't given us a number, but we are going to see more and more of these financial institutions come out, and they tell you 5%, but we know it's going to be a lot worse. Now, the Postal Service, well, they're laying off another 10,000 people. So here they are. They're trimming their workforce by 10,000 people from now throughout 2015. So all these people are now going to be looking for work. And of course, the president's out there saying that we created so many jobs. Well, from January to now, how many layoffs have we had? I mean, thousands upon thousands, and these are from really great companies where people get paid very well. Where are they going to go? Because if Bank of America is laying off, and Deutsche Bank is laying off, and RBS is laying off, and Barclays is laying off. This is the work that these people are doing. They can't go to the other banks and find work now. They're going to have a lot of trouble, and we're going to see a lot more people unemployed, and we're going to see unemployment should be going up, but again, they'll manipulate it and make it go down. Now, China is making another deal with their currency with New Zealand. New Zealand's economic ties with China have been strengthened with a deal to allow direct trade of the New Zealand dollar against the Chinese currency, the renminbi or yuan, and direct convertibility between New Zealand dollar and the yuan cuts out the requirements and additional cost of converting via the US dollar for exporters and importers. And again, we've been seeing China do this all over the globe. They've done it with Australia, now with New Zealand. They're doing it with Africa. Kenya's the clearinghouse. They're doing it with the UK. They're doing it all over the world, and they're bypassing the dollar. Again, this is not going to turn out well for the dollar. Now, we understand that Obamacare is not doing well, and the government has to do something to raise revenue. And to raise revenue, what they're looking at right now is the climate change hoax. And they're setting up and they're launching a climate change website, and the White House just released this news on March 19th that they're going to, unveil this website and the Climate Data Initiative. It's a key part of which is a new government website to make access to the administration's selective data on climate change more readily available. And again, despite the fact that a large body of scientific evidence exists to dispute that so-called climate change, the administration has chosen to ignore the dissenting opinions and proceed full speed ahead as if such change is indisputable. And we know why they're doing this. We understand. They're going to impose taxes. They're going to put taxes on everything because they need this revenue. Again, we saw this happen in France. We're seeing it happen in Spain. We're seeing it happen in Italy. And this is what we're doing. And we have to remember, the White House release notes that the president proposed a budget which include a $1 billion climate resilience fund. And this is the start of them collecting money from you to help this huge debt problem that we have. Because if the interest rates go up, the government is in big trouble, and so are the people of the United States and other people around the world. Now, a couple days ago, Mark Zuckerberg was out there, and he, wrote a little or said something to the effect that together we can build a space that is greater and more important part of the world than anything we have today, but it is also safe and secure. I am committed to seeing this happen, and you can count on Facebook to do our part. And he was telling the government to be more transparent, to cut the spying out, and today it seems like this was all fake, phony. Again, a senior lawyer for the NSA made it completely clear that the U.S. tech companies were fully aware of all the spying going on, including the PRISM program. And again, during a Wednesday hearing of the U.S. government's institutional privacy watchdog, if collection under the law known as Section 702 or the FISA Amendment Act occurred with the full knowledge and assistance of any company from which information is obtained. When The Guardian and The Washington Post broke the PRISM story in June, thanks to Edward Snowden's document release, nearly all the companies listed as participating in the program, and these companies, of course, were Yahoo, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and AOL. They all have backdoors into their systems, allowing the NSA to spy on every single person. And we understand why they're spying, because they need to keep track of every single person. They need to see who is a threat to their power, and they also spy, of course, to blackmail government officials, judges, to get investment ideas, to steal patents, and this is why they have been doing this. Now, We have seen many countries like Catalonia, Moldova, and now we see Venice, Veneto wanting to pretty much separate themselves from Italy. Italy is having a huge, huge problem. They have a huge amount of debt, huge amount of unemployment. Banks are failing, and again, Venice is holding a referendum to secede from Italy. They do not want to be a part of Italy right now. Catalonia is doing the same thing. Moldova wants to join Russia, and we're seeing a complete change on the map right now. Countries are moving away. They're making changes because of what is happening. And again, we see this happen quite a bit as the economies turn down and countries start imposing austerity, taking on more debt, and making it very difficult for the people, and those in the wealthier areas decide, you know what, we do not want to be a part of this, and they start separating themselves from it. Now, in Afghanistan, we see the terrorists are starting to strike, which makes the case for the U.S. to continually to stay there, as they are going to do. And injuries are feared as a gunman have entered the luxurious hotel in the Afghan capital and opened fired. Witnesses are reporting. Afghan security officials have confirmed that gunmen are in Kabul, and a fight is still happening right now. So we can see what's happening. We talked about this before, that they were going to increase terrorism in the area, and this is what they do. They continually build this up, saying, see, this is why we need to be here. See, we told you, this is why we need to be here. This is why the United States needs to be in Afghanistan to protect you from all this. And this is what we're seeing happen right now. Now, out in Ukraine, we're seeing the Ukrainian prime ministers. They're out there, beating their chest, telling the Russian government that, we're going to, block and confiscate the Gazprom properties. We're going to, do whatever we can to start this war, to make you really agitated and to push you in the way we want to push you, so you retaliate on us. And this is exactly what they're looking for. And again, this is all propaganda. They're trying to provoke Russia at this time. Now, if we look at Kiev and Ukraine, they were purchasing oil. They were purchasing the natural gas from Russia, and they were paying around $268 dollars per 1,000 cubic meters. But Kiev has made a deal with Europe, and they're going to pay $370 to $400 per 1,000 cubic meters. So I can see why they decided to go with the EU. They decided to purchase the natural gas from Europe because it's more expensive. And again, when they purchase from Europe, guess what happens? The central bankers make money on it, and this is why they are doing it. Now, in Ukraine, the IMF, was giving them loans. They were giving them a tranche of loans. But again, yesterday when I reported it, it said they didn't have the details and of what the loans consisted of and what the Ukrainian people had to do. Well, now we're seeing exactly what's going on. They're being Cyprused. And it would appear the IMF's dirty little fingerprints are all over this latest piece of legislation in Ukraine. The Ukraine's finance ministry is proposing to take a very similar approach, just like Cyprus. What they're doing in there is that Ukraine is proposing new tax on deposits exceeding 100,000 Ukrainian hryvnia, and the Ukraine tax proposal would include a 1.5% of all deposits. Ukrainian parliament is to consider draft laws which would ban foreign currency bank deposits and introduce a 25% tax on interest on deposits in banks and other financial institutions in circumstances where the interest received is more than 5% above the rate set by the National Bank of Ukraine. So you can see what's happening already. They are being Cyprused. They're doing the bail-ins, they're taking the money, they're taking what they need to make the country continually operate, and these banks continually operate. So you get the loan, you get the paper and ink from the IMF, and we take the money from the people. We've seen this over and over and over again. Now, what do you think is going to happen here? Do you think the Ukrainian people are going to stay and say, hey, we like this. This is fantastic. I like being part of the EU and the IMF. This is really great because, wait a minute, out in Crimea, they're not having any of this. And guess what? You're going to see a lot of people in Ukraine saying, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm out. I'm going over to Crimea. I'm going over to Russia. And they are really shooting themselves in the foot. And this is exactly what people are going to do. And they're going to really get themselves out of Ukraine because they see that this is not going to end well, and they're going to take more and more from the people. Now, the State Department was out there saying that there were Russians firing upon Ukrainian troops, and they love to put out propaganda, and most of the propaganda is coming from the acting president in Ukraine and the prime minister in Ukraine, which are controlled by the central bankers and the U.S. government and EU. But again, the spokesman, the State Department spokesman, claimed that Russia shot first in an incident in Crimea, which left 2 people killed near a military facility, but when asked to back the allegations with facts, or at least explain herself, she just said, let's move on, because you know why? There are no facts. These were snipers again, with uniforms that had no markings. We saw this happen back in the coup, and the same thing's happening again. Of course, whenever they can't back up anything with facts, you know something is wrong. They couldn't back up the Syrian chemical false flag with any facts, and this is why it completely fell apart. The same thing is happening here. They're doing the same tactics. And of course, Russia is out there, and they're saying that the Crimean authorities are openly saying that this incident bears resemblance to the deaths in Kiev in February, where snipers allegedly killed both protesters and police amid a bloody confrontation. And again, we all know what's happening. We all see through this propaganda, and this is why they couldn't back anything up with facts, and they had to move on from the conversation. Now, we understand that Crimean forces, defense forces, were going into the bases in Crimea because they were held by Ukraine troops. Nothing really happened, and they told them, listen, we need you to get out of Crimea and go back to Ukraine, but if you like to stay here, you can. And a lot of the troops did withdraw, but guess what happened? The Ukrainian military in Crimea have been actively taking the Russian side. The regional authorities say 3/4 of the Ukrainian military who were stationed in Crimea are ready to go over to Russia's side. The overwhelming majority of the military bases are already controlled by the Crimean self-defense forces. So most of the people, they see what, especially now, with the Ukrainian people being Cyprus, they're probably looking over there saying, oh, you know what? I'd rather be over here than over there. And yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do right now. Now, we understand that President Obama was out there. They imposed sanctions. He made a big speech about this, that they imposed additional sanctions on individuals. Of course, Russia was out there. They did a tit-for-tat, and Russian Foreign Ministry has published a reciprocal sanctions list on U.S. citizens consisting of 10 names, including John McCain and the senior advisor to President Obama, D. Pfeiffer, and leading advisor on international economics, C. Atkinson. So, again, President Obama also modified his executive orders, and his executive orders went on to say that the President of the United States of America hereby expand the scope of the national emergency declared in Executive Order 13660 of March 6 and expanded by Executive Order 13661 of March 16th, finding that the actions and policies of the government of the Russian Federation, including its purported annexation of Crimea and its use of force in Ukraine, and you notice how they say its use of force in Ukraine. There was no force by Russia. This is completely made up. The force was from the opposition leaders, where the central bankers and the U.S. government and the EU paid them $5 billion to go in there and beat up on people and to shoot people and to push the government out. But anyhow, this went on to say, continue to undermine democratic process and institutions in Ukraine, threaten its peace, security, stability, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, and contribute to the misappropriation of its assets, and thereby constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. All property and interest in property that are in the United States that hereafter come within the United States, or that are hereafter come within the possession of or control of any United States person, of the following persons are blocked and may not be transferred, paid, exported, withdrawn, or otherwise dealt in. Any person determined by the Secretary of the Treasury in consultation with the Secretary of State. So he created this executive order that they're seizing all the properties, basically, and they can't take them, move them, transfer them, get paid for them. And again, this goes on to this ridiculous sanctions that they imposed. They didn't impose it completely on Russia. They imposed it on certain people, and maybe they'll do some certain regions of Russia, depending. Maybe Siberia, because nothing's going on up there, but we'll see what happens. Of course, Moscow is out there. They are completely puzzled by some of the names on the U.S. sanction list. Moscow is studying Washington's list of individuals against whom sanctions were imposed, and already puzzled by some of the names, Russian President Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov said. One can say straight away that we are extremely bewildered by the presence of some of the names on the list. Now again, they're doing it to make a point. Again, these names mean nothing. They don't know why they're on there, and these aren't real sanctions. Now, to take it a step forward, we know that S&P is being sued by the government because they downgraded the United States, and S&P was out there saying, you know what, we're going to downgrade Russia right now. So the Russian Federation outlook from stable to negative, and S&P sees the EU and US imposing further sanctions. Because, you know, all these credit rating agencies, they're right on it. They know exactly what's going. That's why they were giving AAA ratings to all the subprime securities during the housing boom. They have no clue what they're doing. They are paid for. They are bought by all the investment companies, and right now it seems like they're trying to save face because the government is now suing S&P for downgrading them, even though the government says, no, that's not why we're doing it. But the lawsuit came right after they downgraded them. Now, there are concerns about this new National Guard in Ukraine. The new army of the coup-imposed government in Ukraine has begun training exercises outside Kiev, and these are supposed to be for law enforcement and border protection, but a lot of the people in Ukraine are very afraid that these people are going to be used to keep them quiet, to keep control over them, and a lot of these National Guard trainees don't have any training whatsoever with weapons or anything like that, and they are complete novices when it comes to weapons, military tactics, discipline, and it seems like they are just being turned into bullies at this time. Now, Russia is out there, and we understand that the P5+1 deal is going forward, and of course this is an illusion. And of course we understand that this agreement that the president has made with all the other countries, it is under lock and key. Nobody can see it. It's not classified. It's unclassified, but only a handful of people are actually allowed to read the details of this plan. You have to sign in. They have to take your fingerprint, your blood, your DNA, and they keep track of who is actually seeing the details of the plan. But Russia was out there saying, listen, and I don't know if this is absolutely true because it's coming out of the Associated Press, and this could be some type of propaganda. A senior Russian diplomat signaled a possible shift Wednesday in Russia's position on the ongoing Iranian nuclear talks amid tensions with the United States and other Western countries. Now, the only thing I can think of is they might say, listen, we know exactly what they're doing. They're trying to get into the banks This has nothing to do with peace, and they're going to expose what the government's actually doing. Or this is propaganda where they're going to blame Russia on the deal not working out. So this way they can go in and strike. And we understand that Israel said that they're building up their forces. They're ready to strike Iran. They're putting money aside to strike Iran, and they understand they have to do it without the United States because they're talking peace with Iran right now. And again, this is in preparation for something much larger, and we all understand what this is, because we have to remember the United States does have a pact, an agreement with Israel. So if something does happen, again, will Israel just fly into Iran and bomb them? No. I believe there will be some type of incident if this really does occur, and they will show that Iran fired at them somehow, some way. And we are seeing, missiles being shot into Israel, and they say, listen, it came from Syria. This is why we flew in and we bombed their missile base where they're holding all the missiles from Russia, which, and the missiles that were shot into Israel, I think there were like 60 of them. Most of them landed just in the desert, and no one really got hurt. And if you look closely, every single time missiles are being shot into Israel, they always seem to be facing the desert where nobody is. And this happens quite a bit. Now, right now, U.S. NATO forces, the opposition in Syria, they are completely losing the battle in Syria. The Syrian army under Assad has been pushing them back. They've been taking over town after town, and they are completely losing. And this is why we're seeing this build up to some type of an event right now. This is why the embassies and the diplomats were asked to leave, because they can't, if Assad pushes the opposition completely out of the country, what do they have now? The opposition is out. Assad has taken control of his country, and what is the U.S., the central bankers, going to do at this point? So they cannot let this happen, and they realize this, and the opposition right now is really losing. And again, we have to remember these elections are coming up in mid-2014, and if they vote Assad back in, it's going to show the people that it's going to show the world that the people of Syria are for Assad, and this is going to make it very difficult. So from now until summertime, the mid-2014, before the elections, the United States, the central bankers, need to create some type of an event, or they're just going to lose their opportunity, and they're not going to let this happen. And this is why we see everything going on at this point. If we look around, we see the incremental sanctions on Russia. And again, all the players are the same no matter which way they go ahead and do it. Again, the president is out there talking about recovery and how great things are. The Fed told us that we have a strong base for recovery, unemployment coming down. They keep telling us that they're creating jobs, and all I see is layoffs. They didn't even tell you what jobs are being created. Like, what are these great jobs that they're being created? They don't even tell you this. They can't, because they have no proof. And all of this is being played into covering up this collapse. And we see, if we look at all the indicators in Ukraine, the sanctions with Russia, the Iran deal, the buildup of Israeli forces, the removal of the diplomats and the closing of the embassies in America for Syria, the propaganda coming out that Syria is letting go radicals come into the country. We just saw one who was a National Guard member who said he was reading the Al-Qaeda magazines, and he was ready to bomb the LA subway. They are just building and building this up, and eventually we will see this event, because they understand that this collapse is coming, and they do not want to be blamed for it. And this is why all of this is happening very quickly right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.